I thought I'd been cut there for a while. I thought it was. So this is a paper with Eric, and so amongst the academics in the room, Eric and I have done a lot of work with retail data over the last 10, 15 years. And so this is it's the first time we've done work on sort of user-generated content or reviews. And we've had this data for a while, and we weren't too sure what to do with it. And then we discovered, deception. Actually, the first paper I saw about deception and reviews was at this conference about 2 years ago. Dina and Judy, yeah, it's very nice. Okay, so let me give you the context. I'm going to show you some data from Amazon about halfway through the talk. But let me start with, so this is a private label apparel company, and the context is going to be important. Context is going to be very important. So this is a big company. We've all heard of it. Some of you are wearing their clothes right now. Private label apparel company. All of the products are sold primarily through catalogs, internet, and a little bit of their retail stores. Okay, you can only buy their products through their channels. You can't go and buy them from anywhere else. That's going to be important because we can see all of their transactions. We also see all of their reviews. And so a product review for this company is somebody's looking through their website, and on the website, on a product page, there'll be a button inviting you to submit a review. Right? But you have to be a registered user. So all of the data I'm going to show you, these are this company's customers. All of the customers have made purchases from this company and are registered users on their website. So we have about the company has about 330,000 reviews on their different products. And we matched, so we've got all their reviews, we've also got all of their transaction data. So we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to match the two? Well, let me put it another way. It wouldn't be interesting to see if we can match the two. In other words, how many of the reviews are written by people who have never purchased the item? Yeah. Yeah, so this is a paper about that. Who are these people? What are they doing? Yeah. Good. Okay, so and let me start by saying most customers don't write reviews. Most customers don't write reviews. I won't tell you how exactly, but it's a small number. It's a small percentage, like low single digits, small percentage. And these customers aren't representative. Make no mistake, they're not representative. I'm going to show you some data about that. They are not representative, but they're influential. And they're influential whether they've written a review with a prior transaction or whether they've written a review with no prior transaction. I'm going to show you this stuff really matters. Okay, good. So here we go. This is probably the most important table I'm going to show you. On the left are the reviews for which there's no prior transaction for that item. On the right are the reviews for which there is a prior transaction for the item. And what do we see? Look up here. Rating of 1 is the lowest rating. Rating of 5 is the highest rating. These reviews are systematically more negative, and a lot more negative, right? Twice as likely to have a rating of 1. Big effect. Big effect. Those are standard errors under there. So big effect. Okay. So of course this doesn't mean they've never seen the items, right? We need to distinguish never having purchased the item, and there could be some reasons that they could have received them as gifts. There's all sorts of reasons for why this could have occurred. No, they couldn't have purchased the item somewhere else, right? If they purchased the item, we know about it, with a couple of minor exceptions. Okay, so what we're going to do is look for evidence that these are deceptive. And the first thing we do is we go and look through the text of the review comments. And almost all of the reviews have text associated with them. There's a big literature, which is a little bit outside our field, but a big literature on looking at text and looking for linguistic cues of deception. Interestingly, a big topic right now because of Homeland Security. Good, so here's an example of a review, slightly disguised, so you can't Google it and work out who the company is. Here's an example of a review, and the most reliable indication of deception is the number of words people use. And so what happens if we're being deceptive? We use a lot of words because we feel like we've got to write something that's credible. Interestingly, we use shorter words. Why do we use shorter words? because it wears us out so much writing so many words that are deceptive, we end up using simpler words. More exclamation points and so forth. Good, so, and there's a lot of these indicators. The best indicator, though, is number of words. And we've seen that in, the literature shows that in all sorts of different contexts. Even financial statements. When they go back later and discover financial statements that are fraudulent, go back and read the 10K statements, more words. Okay, good. So here we go. Here are the reviews without prior transactions. Here again, here they are with the prior transactions. What do we see? 40% more words. 40% more words. And also more likely to talk about things completely unrelated to the product, right? Because they can't talk about the product because they've never purchased, because they don't have the product. And so going back to an example here, my dad used to take me when we were young to the original store down the hill. I mean, completely unrelated to the product. I also remember it when everything was made in America. Yeah, good. So, so then the next thing we looked at is, so here are all these cues and consistent with this stuff being deceptive. If they haven't got the item, they probably can't talk about the fit of the product or the feel of the product. Right? So even though they're using more words, are they less likely to include words related to the fit and the feel of the product? And the answer is yes, a lot less likely to. So we searched through the text. The most common words about the fit are things like too loose, too tight, too small, too big, too long. Right? Systematically less likely to contain those words, and systematically less likely to contain words describing the feel of the item. Most common are soft, cozy, and snug. Okay, good. So now you're thinking there, you should be sitting there thinking, okay, Duncan, but there's all these other reasons that this could occur unrelated to deception. And so, a big part of the study is ruling that out. I'm going to talk about this one. I don't have time to go through it all, but I'll tell you what we've been able to rule out. Firstly, differences in the items. Well, that's easy to rule out because we've got items with both types of reviews. And you just look within item, and sure enough, that low rating effect survives. What about within reviewer? So we've got reviewers who've written reviews with and without prior transactions. You look within reviewer, sure enough, the low ratings survives. It turns out they still use more words on the reviews without the prior transactions. Gift recipients. So this bothered us for a while. What about these? What about if mum or dad gave me the, now I'm in trouble. Now I'm in trouble. So how do we get at this? We went through the text and looked at for the words like I ordered, I purchased. People who self-profess that they purchased the item, but we know you didn't. And we really know you didn't. So about a third of the reviews say I ordered or I purchased, and those items exhibit exactly the same low rating effect. In fact, if anything, even slightly stronger, which is a very direct measure of deception. Right? It's a very direct measure because you're claiming you did something you simply didn't do. Okay, so misidentified items. And so you could imagine that somebody purchased a pair of khaki shorts, and they get to the website and they look at it and they think, well, those are the khaki shorts I purchased, and they click on and write a review, but they actually got the wrong shorts. Or we go from a zip front fly to a button front fly, and the company changes the item number, right? And so we're in danger of misattributing. Okay, so what do? We just categorize the items at the category level. So we stopped looking at had they purchased that particular item. We looked at had they purchased khaki shorts, right? Anything within the category. What happens? Exactly the same effect, right? It's not because these guys are misidentifying the items. What about somebody sitting there thinking, yeah. These are people buying in retail stores, and you can't match it with their customers. Well, it turns out the firm, like most direct mail firms, spend a lot of effort matching purchases in their retail stores back to their household list, right? And they do a good job. But it's possible, right? It's possible. So first thing we do is we look at transactions in retail stores, because we have a large number of items for which we do, a large number of reviews for which we do have the prior transactions. And in order to explain the low rating effect, what do you need? People are less satisfied. They give lower ratings on purchases in retail stores. Do we think that's likely to be true? No, right? You think people purchasing in retail stores are going to be more happy with their garments because they got to try them on. Turns out they are. Okay, the other part of retail stores is, well, we can exclude people who've purchased in retail stores. On average, people writing a review without a prior transaction, how many items do you think they've purchased from the firm? What do you think? It's about 150. About 150. So the first clue as to what could be happening here. Right? So these people have purchased, what we do is we exclude anybody who purchased any of those items ever in one of their retail stores, and exclude anybody who lives within 400 miles of one of their retail stores. And 400 miles is not just down the road. The same effect, right? So it looks like it's not retail stores. We can also rule out the timing of the reviews, right? What day the review was written, what time the purchase was made relative to the day the review was written. Okay, so then to show that this is a little bit of a bigger effect, those of you who've been to Amazon, you will see in the Amazon product reviews, Amazon is now, since about 2009, has started labeling reviews as either an Amazon verified purchase or not. Right? So we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see what the rating distribution is for the Amazon verified purchases versus the items that don't have Amazon verified purchases? Good, so we have 80 randomly selected books. Actually, randomly selecting books is not the easiest thing to do, but there are 80 randomly selected books. But they've got about 90 reviews each. And what do we see? Exactly the same effect. So this is telling you what? Right? This is telling you what? When people write reviews without having purchased the item, note at Amazon, some of them will have purchased the item somewhere else. At our company, that's just not possible. But there's this big negative rating effect, and this is not competitors writing reviews. It's also not the firm writing the reviews. These are individual customers doing it. So it's not for competitive or strategic reasons. This is customers behaving badly. Okay, so we know a lot about these customers. Let me go back to the apparel firm. We know a lot about these customers. First thing to look at here is I've grouped the customers according to the number of reviews without prior transactions that they've written. Why? Because we're worried there could be a small number of rogue reviewers who are driving this effect. And that's not the case, right? Most of the effect here is being driven by, there's 11 or 12,000 people who have written just one or two of these things. There's thousands of customers doing this. Okay, well, what about the low rating effect? That could just be the rogue reviewers, right? Okay, so here are the ratings, the number of low ratings according to the number of prior transactions you've written. And what do we see? So 12% indicates people who've just written one review without a prior transaction, 12% of them gave a rating of 1. The low rating effect is thousands of individual customers, not a handful of competitors going to the site. So this is a big point, because in the past we'd thought of deceptive reviews being strategic behavior by firms and by their competitors. So Dina and Judy's paper, for example. And that's not what's happening here. That is just simply not what's happening. Right? These are thousands of individual customers. What do we know about the customers? We've got very good demographic data. Very good demographic. So I'll allow you to use your stereotypes here, but here we go. You'll note that we didn't put gender up here. I didn't want to say which gender was more likely to lie. So here we go. So if we're going to write deceptive reviews, we tend to have more children, we're less likely to be married, we're younger, and quite a lot younger. 7% different in age, it's quite a lot. We tend to have lower incomes, lower household values, and we're less likely to have graduate degrees. We also know a lot about their past purchasing. So on average, the people who do this have written 3 reviews instead of about 1.5. They've purchased 156 items on average. These are incredibly good customers. I mean, incredibly good customers. How many items on average have the non-reviewers purchased? Right, so this is just the tail of the distribution of customers. If we look at an average customer from this firm, how many items have they purchased? About 36. So the reviewers are the really heavy volume, and these guys are even worse, even better. Good, and they've also been customers for a long time, right? Been customers for a long time. They tend to buy discounted items, they tend to return things at a higher rate. Good, okay, so we spent a lot of time thinking about why, and your first reaction is these are angry people. They're not angry. what we can do is look at the change in their purchases before and after they write these, and they actually maintain their purchases at a higher rate than other customers. These aren't angry people. Are they seeking status? Possibly. Possibly. I think we think there's some of that going on. But this is not a firm that has elite reviewers. Right? You can search on the number of reviews somebody's written, but we think a lot of what's going on here is these people are self-appointing themselves as brand managers. They're the opposite of angry customers. They love this firm. I mean, they love this firm. Okay, so for that to be the case, why are they writing negative reviews? Right? You think the people who love the firm are more likely to write positive reviews. It turns out that's not true, just in general. If you look at the relationship between the number of items somebody purchases from you and whether their reviews are positive or negative, it turns out the people who buy the most, on average, write more negative reviews. And the effect is quite strong. And the French have this term for it, right? It's your best friends are your hardest critics. And it turns out to be exactly right. Okay, so now imagine that you're a really good customer. You're going through the website. You see, which items are you most likely to write a review on when you've never purchased the item? When's that likely to happen? So we thought it was more likely to happen if you see the company selling something which you didn't expect to see them selling. Right? If they're new items, they're in a new category, or maybe they're niche items. And that turns out to be the case. The reviews without a prior transaction are much more likely to be new items or niche items, things that are unusual. We can also look at the reviews, and I'm not going to show you these results, but we'll also look at the reviews and see who are these people talking to. And we can look at the text and see whether they're directing their comments at the firm, which would be the self-appointed brand manager, or at other customers, which would be more consistent with a status type story. And it turns out, well, here we go, I'll jump through. So these are requests directed to the firm versus advice directed to other customers, just using some of the text mining. And what do we see? They're much more likely to be talking to the firm. Right? Looks a lot like this self-appointed brand manager. Like, please bring this back. Please do this. Okay, so the final result I'm going to want to show you, and this is the scary bit. Right? If you're not worried yet, I mean, this is just, I mean, for this firm, they should be happy it's only about 5% of their reviews. At Amazon, it's 40%. Imagine what it's like at TripAdvisor. Okay, so here's the scary bit. If we look at the period, take the review date for that item, look at the period before and the period after. What happens to revenue on that item, right? The change in revenue on that item as a function of the rating the customer's giving on the item. Make sense? So take reviews without prior transactions, compare the change in revenue according to sort of a difference in difference approach, the academics and the audience. Okay, good. What happens? And so we've scaled, with the highest rating at 5, we just scaled the change in revenue to 0. It turns out these negative reviews are important. Right? It turns out this is really influential. So even though we've got the tail of the customers, they're really influential. This is bad. So what does that mean? That means that if I have twice as many of these negative reviews, and I get on average about 4 of these reviews without prior transactions on each item, what am I doing? I'm losing about 1.5% in revenue. In this industry, that's big. This is a big deal. Just in this tiny little tail out there. Who are these people? Right, yeah, good. And I think that's actually good in some respects. For this company, they're lucky it's only 5% of their reviews. I mean, think about Amazon. It's funny, you read the Amazon reviews, some of the Amazon reviews without prior transactions, you turn to the lower rating ones, and it starts off by saying, I've never read this book, but I'm going to give you my opinion about it. Okay, good. So, we've thought a lot about the implications for this. And the first one is, you don't want to be calling people elite reviewers. Right? You don't want to be encouraging this behavior by creating a social status around writing reviews. Good. Second thing is you want to think really hard. So you want to think really hard about who you're allowing to submit reviews. So this company could easily restrict reviews to people who had purchased the items, as Expedia does. You can only submit a review on Expedia if you've purchased from that firm. Of course, that's a big problem for the TripAdvisors and the Yelps of this world because they can't link reviews to prior transactions. And so I think in the past, the real worry had been, and really if I was to step back and think about why we think this paper is important, it's because in the past we'd thought of this deceptive review phenomenon as really about strategic behavior. Firms inflating their own ratings and competitors lowering their competitors' ratings. That's exactly what Dina and Judy's paper is about. A very nice paper. But this is not what's going on here. Right? This is individual customers doing it for completely intrinsic reasons. And that makes it a much bigger phenomenon, much more worrying phenomenon. The problem is the bias here is all negative. Right? The impact on these guys is all negative. And so sort of a big measurable reduction in revenue. Okay, I'm out of time. Perfect.